All right, so we have here an email asking us to create a new vendor in Ops. So I'm going to take us through a quick tutorial of how to take care of that. It's a few steps involved, but we're going to go through it together so that we'll be able to take care of it. Um, Ops, in this case, is synonymous with adding it to RealPage Financial Suite or RealPage Accounting. These all kind of mean the same thing in this context here. So what Linda has asked is to add this Clean for You vendor into RealPage. So I'm going to start by opening my web browser. This works in Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, doesn't matter. I'm going to navigate to my.realpage.com. And normally we greet it with a login page. Let me show you what that login page looks like. Looks like this. You're going to be asked for your email address, and there will be no password. So we'll just hit next. It'll automatically know based on your login credentials on the computer. If you are not logged into like your CJ computer, then you will be prompted to enter your email address credentials, like the password that you use to log into your work email. All right, so from here, the first step we're going to take is to go into vendor credentialing. Here we're going to check to make sure that this vendor is approved for work. Vendor credentialing checks out for insurance requirements and other various requirements, background checks for our vendors. So we're going to find this vendor. I'm going to search by the vendor name, which is Cleaning for You Services. So let's pop back in here. And let's see if they are here. Great, Cleaning for You Services. Esker Nunez Marquezim. That's the same person here, so we definitely have the right one. They are approved, which is fantastic. And if we didn't already have their W-9 here, you can actually just get it by clicking on this documents right here. It's really convenient. So in the documents, this is their business package, we can go to find their W-9. Scrolling down, these are all alphabetical. So we can do W-9, and we could find it right here. That's in the case where maybe if the email that came in didn't have the attachment, it just said, please add Clean for You to vendor credentialing, then we would not need to ask them for this W-9 if it's already in here. So just a little tip that you can get your W-9 right here in vendor credentialing. So they're approved. We have their W-9. We are ready to move on to the next step. A quick caveat, in the case where this vendor is not approved, if you see anything here in this status that is other than approved, like if you see not approved, not enrolled, anything like that, then you'll need to reach back out to the person who made the request. In this case, it would be Linda and Bruce, and tell them that this vendor has not been approved in vendor credentialing and that they need to reach out to the vendor and have them seek approval through vendor credentialing. That means that the vendor will have to email RealPage or give them a phone call. For your context, if anybody asks you, that information is right here under training. This is the information here. So the vendor can call toll free, or the vendor can email this email address. So if the vendor is not approved in here, the vendor is going to have to get in touch with RealPage and work on their approval status. In this case, we are ready to rock. They are approved. So we're going to go back over to our RealPage home, and we're going to use the financial suite. In here, we're basically going to take the information out of the W-9 and enter it into the RealPage system. So what I like to do is I actually like to make this kind of a split screen situation, where now we have our RealPage stuff on one side and our W-9 on the other. So I realize I kind of just blew through that. So what we want to do is we're going to come up to this menu and make sure we find accounts payable in this list. And from accounts payable, we're going to go to vendors. This is where we're going to have our full list of vendors. What we're interested in doing here is sorting by vendor ID so that we can find the highest number on here. The highest number tells us what the most recent entry was. So Chanjifu is the most recent entry. So we are going to make our next one be number 88375. So simple as that. It's just numeric. You can see they all kind of go in order here. So we're going to add a vendor up here, and just remember that we're going to do 88375. So I'm going to hit add. So the first thing it's going to ask us is the ID, and we're just adding to the previous number that we've got in the system. And then our name, you actually see we have two different names on our W-9. We always, when these names are different, we always want to go with number 2, okay? So we can ignore Esther in number 1. Instead, we're going to go number 2, cleaning for you services. So we're going to do caps lock. Everything in here we're going to do in caps lock. Not a huge deal if you forget to do caps lock, but we want to try to keep everything standard. We do everything in caps lock over here. So cleaning for you services. And this is not a one-time use vendor. You could check that off if we were using it for one-time use, if that was like requested in the email. You do that. In that case, you'd want a different ID number. It would be temp and then a longer number than this. I can show you that on another time. So we can skip that. We're skipping these other things here. We're going straight down to the contact information. This information pulls straight from up here, so we can leave this alone. Address comes from right over here, number 5, which is 20 Summer Street, apartment 3. It's like our vendor accidentally typed it in here twice. That's okay, we can ignore that. City is Everett. Spell that right? Yes. State is Massachusetts, and our zip is 02149. Okay, so that's all we need to do here. Very clean cut, simple ID, name, address. We took care of it from 2 and 5. Next, we're going to move on to additional information, and we're going to enter our tax ID. That comes from down here. It will be either a social security number or an employer identification number. So in this case, we have the employer identification number, which is 87-1063-236. Okay, so that's literally just this number here. And then the next thing we need to check is, are they 1099 eligible? Now, we know this information based on this section 3 right here, section 3. There's some important things to note here. So in this case, individual sole proprietor or single member LLC is checked off. So that means that they are 1099 eligible. If C corporation or S corporation is checked off, either one of these, that means that they are not 1099 eligible. So if either C corp or S corp is checked off, then we will leave this unchecked. If individual sole proprietor or single member LLC or partnership or trust / estate or limited liability company, any of those things are checked off, we're going to check off 1099 eligible, and we're going to enter our 1099 name, the same thing that we entered for the business name. So we're doing cleaning for you services. Okay, so just remember, this gets checked unless C Corp or S Corp. Pretty straightforward. Next thing we want to do is we want to add an attachment. We're going to attach the W-9 to this vendor. So we're going to come here. This big list of stuff is already attached to other vendors. We're going to add. And ID, this is not like super crucial, but I just usually like to add W-9 and the name of the business. You services. And sometimes, like, this has a character limit. Like you can see, I can only type 2 more characters there. If your business name is longer than allowable here, that's fine. You can let it be cut off. You can change it so that it fits better. But don't be discouraged if you find out that your business name is too long to fit in this field. That's not a big deal. And then down here, you don't have those requirements on like length of field. So I just like to put it in again, W-9, cleaning For you, I missed the C there. For you, services. Folder we can leave as W9, that's perfect. Then we're going to attach it. Now, this actually isn't saved to my computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop open Linda's email again. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do save as. And I'm just going to throw that right on my desktop for easy use. So I have a few other W9s here. I just like to name it W9 and then the name of the business, meaning for you, services. We save. So now I've got this W9 saved to my computer. I can browse. I'll go to my desktop right where I saved it. And we've got cleaning for you services. I double click and now it's uploaded. That's perfect. We can hit save. And now it's attached, just like we like. Date added is automatically populated with today's date. I'm going to put in my own initials to show that this is the work that I did. And nothing else needs to be done down here. I'm going to, so to recap on this page on additional information, we did the tax ID, we did 1099 eligible based on section number 3 over here. We made an attachment, and then we added our own initials. That's the last step of this page here. Now we're just going to hit save. It's going to give us a pop-up asking for information about the 1099, say form 1099 information. This is another thing where we're going to need to just kind of check over here with the information I'm going to provide you right now. So form name will either be a miscellaneous information, form 1099 MISC, or it will be a non-employee compensation form NEC. So in our case, because it is individual sole proprietor or single member LLC, we're doing a form NEC down here. All other times, so when you have a 1099, so which would be partnership, trust estate, or limited liability company, if it's any of those 3 things, we're going to do miscellaneous information, form 1099 MISC. So in our case, we're going to do a form NEC. In those other 3 cases, you would be doing a form 1099 MISC. Okay. Then down here in this box, the default 1099 box, we will leave this as is, number 1. And entity, we will leave blank. I'm going to make a quick summary here also in the case that this was a partnership, trust, estate, or limited liability company. If it was one of those and we chose miscellaneous, this one here, our options here change. So I just want you to be aware of that. If you're working with a 1099 MISC because you're in a partnership, trust, or LLC, in that case, you would almost always choose other income as your option here, unless this individual, the vendor we're working with, is a legal entity, if they're like an attorney or something like that. In that case, we are going with the option down here for this one, number 10, gross proceeds paid to an attorney. Okay, so in only cases where you're working with an attorney, you'll use number 10. Otherwise, you're using number 3. Okay, and again, those are only when you're working with a miscellaneous form. In our current situation, we're actually working with an NEC. And then that automatically changes this back to having fewer options, which we will always leave as number 1. We don't need to worry about number 4, 5, and 7. Again, our entity remains blank. We click save, and we are finished. Simple as that. We can see Clean Your View Services is here, and we are done. In another scenario where I want to quickly cover if when you had originally gone into vendor credentialing to begin this process, right? That was here at our RealPage home. I'm going to max out our screen. Vendor credentialing, when we were checking to see if the vendor had been approved or not, if we were in here and the vendor was not existent at all, we'll do an example. We recently added a vendor for the league. I'm just going to search Holbrook. see that they're not in here. I'm going to modify my settings a little bit just to see if they're really fall under a different category. So I'm not going to show enrolled only. I'm going to show everyone with the name of Holbrook, right? There's a lot here. So I'm going to add Little League. Nothing. So with that in mind, I now know that this vendor is not in vendor credentialing. And so normally I would ask the property manager who requested to add this vendor to go tell the vendor they need to get in touch with vendor credentialing, use this phone number or this email address. However, in this case, because I've already worked with the manager on it, I know that Holbrook Little League has received an exemption approval from the regional manager so that they're not required to be in vendor credentialing. We don't need them. They're not going to be performing work on our property. So we're not going to need to pay them we're not going to have them get approved for insurance purposes because they're not really a liability in that regard. So we want to add them into the system here just so that we can make sure that they are here. We have record of them. So that the next time we search for them, we'll be able to see, okay, they are in the system and they've been exempted from the approval status. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add vendor. You can also add vendor up here as well. We're going to add our vendor. It's going to be Holbrook Little League. And I am going to go find that W-9. So pop into my email, just over here. I'm going to find it in my deleted items for a Little League. New vendor here. Okay, so this was sent by right here. So this is our Holbrook Little League vendor. I'm going to save this to my desktop just so I can have it, just like we did before. And we're going to go on back over here. We're going to pop open that W-9 like we did in the past. All right, I'm just finding the one that we just saved. It's the Holbrook Little League W-9. And here we have it, Holbrook Little League. So again, I'm just going to basically be entering this information into here. Vendor name is Holbrook Little League. We don't really see these though. This means that the vendor name is required. These are not required, so we're not going to worry about them tremendously. Client vendor number is useful. It would be good to kind of grab that from Financial Suite, right? You can come into Financial Suite. So we've already added them in there. Continue. This is a pretty easy one. We're going back to accounts payable like we did before. Vendors, again, same thing. And we're just searching for Holbrook. You can see they're right here, Holbrook Little League. Our vendor ID is 88372. So I'm back in vendor credentialing. Our client vendor number is 88372. That's not crucial, but it is helpful. So I do like to keep that in there. I highly recommend that we keep putting those in. Address line 1, we're going to find that information in our W-9. PO Box 8 in Holbrook, Massachusetts. Zip code is 02343. Is that right? Did I get that right? 02343. Yes. Please select OK to normalize, else cancel. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so it's asking to normalize the address based on what the USPS address is. So that's fine. We normalize it by hitting OK, and then it tells us what we did. So we hit OK. The address is verified by the system. That's great. Moving on, the remit payment address is almost always the same. If you have any notation in the email request or anything that there's a different address. You can put that in here, but we're doing same as street address. And we are almost done. We've entered all the information, so they are now going to be added as a vendor. Holbrook Little League has been added to the system. Great. And then it automatically shows us what the vendor looks like here. They're not enrolled. Their vendor ID is 118715 in that system. Remember, this is the client vendor ID that we have in Financial Suite. Those will be different. Now we want to add the W-9 to this vendor. That's not something that we can do on our own. We need to email this request to RealPage. So to do that, I'm just going to pop open a new email. And if you remember, we can get in touch with RealPage by going here, right? So I'm going to copy that. Use Control-C to copy. I'm going to paste that into our to line, and I'm just going to request attach W-9 to vendor. Holbrook Little League. Now I want to just simply say, please use the attached W-9. And before I forget, I'm going to attach my Holbrook Little League W-9. Please use the attached W-9 to add to vendor ID number. And then we have that from before. It was this. Copied that. So I'm just going to, here, it was a different font. That annoys me. Please use the attached W-9 to add vendor number that to vendor credentialing. This is for Holbrook Little League. Thank you on the end. And we are off. We've completed that in vendor credentialing. So now if we were to come back in and search for Holbrook Little, there they are, Holbrook Little League. We just added them in. They don't have any docs like our approved one did because that hasn't been added yet, but it will be added shortly thanks to that email we just sent out. Now we want to exempt them. So we pop them open in here again. We're going to scroll down. We're going to update property list. Now you would add the property who is requesting that this be added. In this case, it was Holbrook and Ramblewood. Just one property in here. Ramblewood Apartments. Save. You're going to come down. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. We're going to exempt them now, which is right here on their main page. I'm going to take us back to the beginning just so that we can see where that is, right? So when we search, we got Holbrook Little League. We open it up. We make sure we add them to our property list so that Ramblewood is now using them. And then we're going to exempt them. Choose a reason. We can just choose other. It's fine. And then we'll put in exemption approved regional. And I like to put in the regional's initials followed by my own initials. You can put in an expiration date for the exemption. So if the regional said they can be exempt for 10 days, you can just come in here, choose the end date, and then hit save. So now we are truly finished with all of those steps, and we can email back the person who originally made the request and tell them that they are all set. When a request comes through, they're usually looking for ops, and we didn't actually use ops. We used vendor credentialing and Financial Suite. So Financial Suite will send information two ops every so often. Believe we have that in our procedure. So if we just quickly look at the accounting procedure for new vendor requests, we can see that this is the time frame down here at the bottom. So at these times, the vendor that you just set up will become available for the uh, property manager to use. So if you had created the vendor at say 10:30, at 11 o'clock, it would be ready for them. If you did it at noon, they'd have to wait till 1, etc. These are the times where they'll pull through. So you can let them know when it'll be ready, and you'll be done with the process. And of course, if you have any trouble, we do have the procedure here in CJ Connects for new vendor requests, or you can email Carmen Goodrich or myself, Kennedy O'Brien, and we will help get you straightened out. All right. Have a great day, everybody.